Dark clouds gathered ominously over the kingdom of Nok. The skies had turned an unnatural shade of grey, casting eerie shadows on the land below. In the distance, the sound of drums echoed through the valleys, a foreboding rhythm that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. This was not a day like any other. The air was thick with fear, and even the animals seemed to sense that something terrible was about to happen. King Akwasi stood at the entrance of his palace, his heart heavy with dread. He had ruled the kingdom of Nok for many years, bringing peace and prosperity to his people. But now, a dark prophecy threatened to undo everything he had worked so hard to build. The oracle had warned him that his reign would be the last, that the Nok people would face ruin unless a great sacrifice was made. But what that sacrifice would be, the oracle had refused to say. The king's two sons, Kwame and Kofi, stood by his side, each feeling the weight of their father's burden. Kwame, the elder of the two, was a fierce warrior, brave and strong. He had always been quick to action, eager to prove himself as a leader. Kofi, on the other hand, was thoughtful and wise beyond his years. He preferred to solve problems with his mind rather than with his sword. Though the brothers were close, the looming threat to their kingdom had begun to drive a wedge between them. A sudden gust of wind swept through the palace courtyard, carrying with it a low, mournful wail that seemed to come from the very earth itself. The people of Nok were frightened, and their fear was palpable. They whispered among themselves, their eyes wide with terror, as strange and terrible things began to happen in their once peaceful kingdom. The rivers had turned to a murky red, the crops were withering in the fields, and whole villages had disappeared overnight, leaving nothing but empty huts and eerie silence in their wake. King Akwasi knew that the time for action had come. He could no longer ignore the signs, the whispers of a curse that had been placed upon his people long ago. He called upon the elders and the oracle, seeking their counsel, but their words only deepened his despair. The curse, they said, it was real, a punishment from the spirits for a betrayal that had occurred generations before. And now, the spirits demanded restitution, a sacrifice of great value, or the kingdom of Nok would be lost forever. As the king struggled with this terrible decision, Kwame and Kofi took it upon themselves to save their people. Kwame, ever the warrior, was determined to confront the curse head-on. He would journey into the forbidden forests, where it was said that the spirits of the ancestors dwelled, to seek their guidance and, if necessary, to do battle with them. Kofi, however, believed that the answer lay not in force but in understanding. He would travel to distant lands in search of ancient knowledge, hoping to uncover a way to lift the curse without resorting to violence. The brothers set out on their separate journeys, each driven by love for their father and their people, but each also carrying the weight of their own fears and doubts. As they ventured further from home, they encountered dangers and challenges that tested their resolve. Kwame faced treacherous terrain, wild beasts, and the ever-present threat of betrayal from those who would see him fail. Kofi, on the other hand, found himself entangled in a web of intrigue and deception as he sought the truth behind the curse. Meanwhile, back in Nok, King Akwasi's situation grew more desperate. The strange occurrences in the kingdom increased in intensity, and the people's fear turned to panic. The king knew that his time was running out, and he began to question whether he could bring himself to make the ultimate sacrifice, one that would cost him everything but might save his people. The kingdom teetered on the brink of collapse, and the fate of Nok hung in the balance. As Kwame and Kofi continued their quests, they realized that the true enemy was not the curse itself, but the darkness within their own hearts. The brothers would have to confront their deepest fears and make choices that would shape not only their own destinies but the future of their entire kingdom. As the prophecy neared its fulfillment, the brothers returned to Nok, each bearing the knowledge and power they had gained on their journeys. But with this power came a terrible revelation: the great sacrifice required to lift the curse was not what they had expected. It was a choice, a decision that would pit brother against brother, and would test the limits of their love and loyalty to one another and their people. In the end, the true test of leadership would not be in the strength of arms or the wisdom of words, but in the courage to make the hardest choice of all. And as the final hour approached, the brothers would have to decide whether they would be remembered as the saviors of Nok or as the last kings who presided over its fall. The distant thunder rumbled ominously, shaking the very earth beneath their feet. Kwame and Kofi had returned to the kingdom of Nok, each carrying the weight of their respective journeys. The once mighty kingdom was now a shadow of its former self, plagued by fear and despair. The people, once proud and vibrant, now cowered in their homes, whispering of the curse that had brought them to the brink of ruin. The brothers stood before their father, King Akwasi, in the great hall of the palace. The air was thick with tension, and the king's face was etched with worry. He could see the changes in his sons. Kwame's fierce determination had hardened into something almost ruthless, while Kofi's quiet wisdom had deepened into a heavy burden. "Father," Kwame began, his voice steady and resolute, "I have faced the spirits in the Forbidden Forest. They are powerful, but they can be defeated. We must gather our warriors and strike them down before they can destroy us all." Kofi shook his head, his expression pained. "No, Kwame. The spirits are not our enemies. They are the guardians of our land, angered by the wrongs of the past. We cannot defeat them with violence. I have discovered ancient knowledge that speaks of a ritual, one that can appease the spirits and lift the curse without bloodshed." King Akwasi looked from one son to the other, torn between their conflicting views. He knew that the future of their kingdom rested on this decision, but the weight of the prophecy loomed over him. The oracle's words echoed in his mind, "A great sacrifice must be made, or the kingdom of Nok will fall." "Tell me, Kofi," the king said quietly, "what is this ritual you speak of?" Kofi hesitated, his eyes filled with sorrow. "The ritual requires a sacrifice, father. But not of life. It demands the surrender of the most precious thing to our people, the royal crown. We must bury it in the sacred ground of our ancestors, returning it to the earth from whence it came. Only then will the spirits be appeased." Kwame's eyes blazed with anger. "You would have us give up our crown? Surrender our birthright? That is madness, Kofi. The crown is a symbol of our strength, our legacy. Without it, we are nothing." Kofi met his brother's fiery gaze with calm resolve. "The crown may be a symbol of power, but it is also a reminder of the arrogance that brought this curse upon us. The spirits do not seek our destruction, they seek our humility. If we do not give up the crown willingly, they will take everything from us." King Akwasi closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The crown had been passed down through generations, a symbol of the strength and unity of the Nok people. But now, it seemed, it had become a source of division and strife. He opened his eyes and looked at his sons, seeing in them the future of their people. "The decision is not mine alone," the king said slowly. "It is the will of the ancestors, and it is the duty of the king to protect his people. But I will not force this choice upon you, my sons. The two of you must decide together, for it is your generation that will inherit the consequences." Kwame and Kofi stared at each other in silence, the gulf between them growing wider with each passing moment. The great hall seemed to darken, as if the very walls were closing in on them. The fate of Nok hung in the balance, and neither brother could see a way forward that did not end in disaster. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hall, and the doors burst open. A group of villagers, their faces pale with fear, rushed inside. "Your Majesty," one of them cried. "The river has turned black, and the fields are burning. The curse is upon us." King Akwasi rose to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. The time for talk was over. The curse was no longer a distant threat, it was here, now, threatening to consume them all. "Go," the king commanded, his voice firm. "Do what you must to save our people. But remember this, no matter what happens, you are brothers. Do not let this curse destroy the bond between you." With those words, Kwame and Kofi turned and left the hall, each determined to follow his own path. The kingdom of Nok was on the brink of destruction, and only one thing was certain: whatever choice they made, the consequences would be dire. As the brothers prepared for their final confrontation, the land itself seemed to groan in agony. The skies darkened, and a chill wind swept through the kingdom, carrying with it the cries of the ancestors. The spirits were watching, waiting to see if the Nok people would learn the lesson they had so long resisted. Kwame gathered the warriors, ready to march into the Forbidden Forest and face the spirits in battle. Kofi, on the other hand, prepared the sacred ground for the ritual, gathering the elders and those who believed in the power of peace. The people of Nok were divided, torn between the two sons of their king. Some followed Kwame, believing that strength and courage would save them. Others stood with Kofi, placing their faith in wisdom and humility. As the final hour approached, the tension in the air was palpable. The brothers stood on opposite sides of the kingdom, each ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for their people. But in the end, only one could be right. And as the prophecy foretold, a great sacrifice would indeed be made, one that would change the fate of the kingdom forever. The drums of war sounded in the distance, and the spirits of Nok stirred, waiting to see if the sons of the king would bring salvation or doom. The night fell heavy over the kingdom of Nok, and the once clear skies were now shrouded in darkness. The drums of war echoed through the forests, sending shivers down the spines of all who heard them. The warriors, led by Kwame, moved silently through the underbrush, their faces set with grim determination. They knew that the spirits they were about to face were not ordinary foes, they were beings of immense power, angered by the wrongs of the past. Yet Kwame's belief in their strength and his own unyielding resolve drove them forward. At the same time, on the other side of the kingdom, Kofi and the elders stood in the sacred grove, preparing for the ritual that Kofi believed was their only hope. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, and the flickering flames of torches cast long shadows on the ground. The ancient symbols of their ancestors were carved into the earth, forming a circle around the burial site where the crown of Nok would be laid to rest. Kofi's heart was heavy with doubt and fear, but he knew he had to remain strong. If they failed, the spirits would unleash their full wrath upon the kingdom. As the warriors reached the edge of the forbidden forest, Kwame raised his hand, signaling for them to stop. The forest was eerily quiet, save for the rustling of leaves in the wind. The trees loomed tall and menacing, their twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Kwame tightened his grip on his spear, his eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. He could feel the presence of the spirits, their anger palpable in the air. "Stay close," Kwame whispered to his men. "We must face them together." With a deep breath, Kwame stepped into the forest, the others following close behind. The moment they crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped, and a thick mist began to rise from the ground. The warriors moved in a tight formation, their weapons at the ready. The farther they went, the thicker the mist became until it was almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a low, guttural growl. The mist swirled and parted, revealing a pair of glowing red eyes in the darkness. A massive, shadowy figure emerged from the fog, its form shifting and flickering like smoke. The creature was unlike anything they had ever seen, part beast, part spirit, with the head of a lion and the body of a serpent. It let out a deafening roar, causing the ground to tremble beneath their feet. "Stand your ground," Kwame shouted, raising his spear. "We fight for Nok." The warriors charged forward, their battle cries piercing the night. The creature met them head-on, its claws slashing through the air with deadly precision. Kwame fought with all his might, but the creature seemed to grow stronger with every strike. It moved with unnatural speed, dodging their attacks and retaliating with terrifying force. Meanwhile, back at the sacred grove, Kofi knelt before the burial site, holding the crown of Nok in his hands. The elders chanted softly, their voices rising and falling in rhythm with the flames. Kofi closed his eyes, focusing all his energy on the ritual. He could feel the spirits gathering around them, their presence both comforting and intimidating. "Ancestors of Nok," Kofi whispered, "we offer you this crown as a symbol of our repentance. May it bring peace to our land and end the curse that plagues us." With trembling hands, Kofi placed the crown in the center of the circle. As soon as the metal touched the earth, a powerful surge of energy rippled through the air. The ground began to shake, and the flames of the torches flared up, burning brighter than ever before. The chanting grew louder, filling the night with a haunting melody. But just as the ritual seemed to be reaching its climax, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the forest. Kofi's eyes snapped open, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that voice, it was Kwame. Without a second thought, Kofi leaped to his feet and ran towards the sound, the elders calling after him in vain. As he neared the edge of the forest, the mist began to clear, revealing the battlefield where Kwame and his warriors were locked in a desperate struggle. The ground was littered with the bodies of fallen men, and the creature was still fighting with relentless fury. Kwame! Kofi shouted, rushing to his brother's side. Kwame turned to face him, his face pale and streaked with blood. He was breathing heavily, barely able to stand. Kofi, it's too strong. We can't defeat it. Kofi grabbed his brother's arm, his voice urgent. We don't have to defeat it. The ritual, it's working. But we must do it together. Kwame hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. He had always believed in strength, in fighting for what was theirs. But now, standing on the brink of death, he realized that Kofi might be right. Perhaps there was another way, a way that didn't involve violence and destruction. Come, Kofi urged, pulling him towards the sacred grove. We must finish what we started. With one last glance at the battlefield, Kwame nodded and allowed his brother to lead him away. The creature roared in anger, sensing its prey slipping away, but it did not follow. Instead, it watched as the two brothers disappeared into the night, the mist closing in behind them. When they reached the grove, Kofi and Kwame joined hands, standing at the center of the circle where the crown lay. The elders resumed their chanting, and the ground beneath them began to glow with a soft, golden light. The energy in the air grew stronger, wrapping around the brothers like a protective shield. Together, they knelt and placed their hands on the crown, their voices merging with the chant. The light intensified, spreading outwards in waves until it engulfed the entire kingdom. The spirits, drawn by the power of the ritual, began to gather around the grove, their forms shimmering like ghosts in the night. For a moment, everything was still. Then, with a blinding flash of light, the crown was absorbed into the earth, leaving nothing behind but a faint outline in the dirt. The ground shook one last time before settling into an eerie calm. The mist lifted, revealing a sky full of stars. The spirits, their anger appeased, slowly faded away, their presence leaving a sense of peace and tranquility in the air. The curse that had plagued Nok for so long was finally lifted. Kofi and Kwame stood in silence, the weight of what they had done sinking in. They had made the ultimate sacrifice, not just of the crown, but of their pride, their beliefs, and their bond as brothers. In that moment, they understood that true strength came not from power or force, but from unity and humility. As dawn broke over the kingdom of Nok, the people emerged from their homes, their faces filled with hope. The fields were no longer burning, and the river ran clear once more. The land, once cursed, was now blessed. King Akwasi, having witnessed the ritual from afar, approached his sons, pride and relief evident in his eyes. You have saved our people, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The ancestors will honor your names for generations to come. Kwame and Kofi exchanged a glance, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious, not as warriors or scholars, but as brothers, united in their love for their people and their land. And so, the story of the last king of Nok became legend, a tale passed down through the ages, reminding all who heard it that the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with the heart.